Mayor Scott, if you choose to do so, to respond to the tomfoolery and attacks on you for having the nerve to be Black and also a mayor.
Well, I think, listen, I know, and we all know, and you know very well, that Black men and young Black men in particular have been the boogeyman for those who are racist and think that only straight, wealthy white men should have a say in anything. We've been the boogeyman from them since the first day they brought us to this country. And what they mean by DEI, in my opinion, is duly elected incumbent. We know what they want to say, but they don't have the courage to say the N-word. And the fact that I don't believe in their untruthful and wrong ideology, and I am very proud of my heritage and who I am and where I come from, scares them, because me being at my position means that their way of thinking, their way of life of being comfortable and suffering, and while everyone else suffers, is going to be at risk, and they should be afraid, because that's my purpose in life.
I will allow you, Mayor.
Mayor Brandon Scott breaking it down, breaking DE&I down and what they really mean. He's been getting it from the right, from the conservatives, which is really, really ridiculous. Welcome to the National Newspaper Publishers Association's Let It Be Known. And the tragedy of the Francis Scott Key Bridge in Baltimore continues to hit home as two more bodies were pulled out of the water last night. Two men in a truck. They were pulled out last night, and family members who continue to have held out hope were devastated, as you can imagine. We'll have more on the Baltimore Bridge this morning. Ice Cube has announced, of course, with his favorite media, mainstream, white media that is, that he's offered white female athlete Caitlin Clark a $5 million deal to play in his Big Three league. And it's not bad enough that his comments to me were not offensive enough. It was the comments in the chat from other Black folks that really, folks, you got to wake up. Ramona Edlin, who helped popularize the term African Americans, has died at the age of 78. We'll tell you how Ramona Edlin came to help Jesse Jackson coin the term African Americans. And the Los Angeles legislature is proposing reparations for Latinos and others who were displaced decades ago when the Brooklyn Dodgers moved to Los Angeles, and they decided to build a stadium over Chavez Ravine. And we will discuss the reparations, that hateful word for some there that they are now discussing there in Los Angeles. Of course, look, they can discuss it all they want. They had a proposal. They had a committee. They spent all this money for this committee, but they won't spend it on reparations. The committee studied it. The committee made their recommendations. And all of a sudden, Los Angeles said, we don't have any money. But yet now they're going to study reparations for other folks. We also began this morning with the Tennessee State Legislature. They passed a bill that would vacate the board of Tennessee State University and leave it to Governor Bill Lee to appoint new members. This is another assault. We heard Mayor Scott talk about this assault on DE&I and what they're really saying. Well, you know who leads Tennessee State, right? It's none other than the great Dr. Glenda Glover, who we've spoken with many a times. The passage of the Republican-backed bill comes in amid years of scrutiny over the historically Black university's finances and leadership as it searches for a new president. The results of a forensic audit commissioned last year by lawmakers are still pending and expected out at the end of the month, which is a couple of days. The Senate passed the measure in a 25-6 vote after 5 minutes of discussion. 5 minutes. 5 minutes it took them to say, no more DE&I stuff, no more of this. All 6 senators who voted against the bill were Democrats, of course. The bill has stirred a lot of controversy. It's $2.1 billion in historic underfunding at TSU by the state. $2.1 billion underfunding. Historic underfunded. This is the challenges, once again, that HBCUs have had all the time. And we know that this administration at the White House, the Biden-Harris administration, has provided more funds than any administration, perhaps any combined. And as Power 96 highlights, that Mississippi just tried to shut down 3 HBCUs. We see where this is going. See, they want to take away DE&I. They want to get rid of HBCUs. Then they want to tell us, Black folks and Latino folks and minority folks, you can't go to our schools. They're gonna go back to, and I was told, let me finish the sentence, right? They're gonna tell us soon, you can't live in this neighborhood or that neighborhood. You know, they shut Diddy's, they went into Diddy's house, he up there with all the rich white folks. They're gonna tell people, even like Diddy, that you can't live there anymore. But I was told that in southern New Jersey, there is such a community that doesn't allow Black folks. Now, I am personally investigating that. I was told this, and I'm looking into that. But you're going to see more and more of that. They don't want you to school. So remember now, they don't want you educated. Who didn't they want educated a few hundred years ago? Right. This is the goal. This is the goal. We always talk about it, how they, the MAGAs and the Republican right-wing extremists, how they want to take us back. And they're serious about it. And we laugh about it. Maybe some of us laugh about it. They're very much serious about that. Because think about it. They want to take away the jobs, right? Because anybody Black in corporate America, they're going to look at it and say it's a DEI hire, even though it may not have been. That's how they're going to characterize it. And they're going to get rid of you. Woman, they see that bodily autonomy out the window. The Black dude down in North Carolina, the lieutenant governor who's bucking to be Trump's vice president. Hate to even say his name. I'm not even going to say his name. Y'all know who I'm talking about. He said the quiet part way out loud. He said women should not have the right to vote. He said women should not have autonomy over their bodies. And they applauded. They applauded. Even crazy white women in the audience applauded. And so they want to take women's autonomy, their bodily autonomy from them. They want to take education away from minorities. They want to take jobs away from minorities. And they're putting all these Gestapo laws in place. What do you think come on. You don't need a degree. You don't even need a diploma to understand what's happening in America. And right, Southbound 3,100% right. The hateful male version of Candace Owens down there in North Carolina said that he also said Blacks should pay white folks reparations. We remember that well, that he said that. And look at the job. Mike V mentions that in the tech industry, Black people get less than 1% of the $270 billion in venture capital funds, and they want to stop that as well. The Fearless Fund is a prime example of this. Just talking about the Fearless Fund yesterday. My wife and I were walking, we were talking about that. They're telling Black women, the courts have told Black women that you cannot support other Black women-owned small businesses unless you help white women. This is exactly what the court said. That's not something that I'm saying is my interpretation. That's exactly what the appeals court, the federal appeals court, ruled it. As I've said before, if you are not already awakened, then what Stevie Wonder said in Higher Grounds is, he said, stop sleeping. Well, you might as well continue sleeping. University leaders there at TCU have pleaded with lawmakers to extend the current board and allow it to build upon the progress it has made in the last year. But Senator John Lumbergh, a Republican, filed the amendment to the bill that would vacate the board. He has repeatedly claimed that they have financial issues there, and they have continued to have financial issues. And the bill continues to advance through the Senate. And he spoke about the incomplete forensic audit, saying the firm did not yet have the documents and other items it needed from TSU. President Glenda Glover, our friend, and other university leaders have maintained that they've gone to great lengths to cooperate with auditors. And you know, these are auditors ordered by these right-wing folks. So you know that they're giving President Glover and others fits. And the board chair, Deborah Cole, TSU's, I should say, board chair, Deborah Cole, came out and said, listen, I'm very proud of the work that they've done. She praised Dr. Glover and others for helping to improve the university's finances. She said they increased its endowment and they built up its reserves, all the while navigating multiple audits. So we see what's going on there. It's in plain sight. Power 96 says he's reached out to Alabama and UF head football coaches. Not one will talk about DE&I. Right, exactly. He says those young black men there are just simply cash cows. And again, what does that remind you of? Right? You remember when you learned about slavery, and you know they examined the young black, as they would refer to them, as bucks, to see how they could make money off of them. It's the same mentality that the MAGA folks, the right-wing extremists, want to go back to. And what they're doing at Tennessee State is just abhorrent. And it really begs the question, it really begs what Roland Martin, we talked about that extensively yesterday, about his saying that Black media needs to come together, put egos aside. Well, we all, I mean, the powers that be, those who are considered the power brokers of the Black community, need to come together on things like this. You know, whether it's the NAACP, Urban League, it should be right now, when it comes to all things America, it should be all hands on deck. And that means that all of the Black media, Black-owned media, all of the organizations, the alphabet organizations, Urban League, NAACP, et cetera, should be coming together and putting egos aside, as Roland said, and saying, hey, it's a crisis. This is sound the alarms. We had an alignment, and we still have somewhat of an alignment. I don't know how strong it remains with the Hispanic press, NAHB, and I think that's important. And I think it's extremely important now, because no matter, it's not just Black folks, it's Latino folks. It's certainly, and we saw how MAGA has now drawn the line with their LGBTQ supporters, those of that ilk, and they don't want them. They're now. We saw a dude the other day being harassed, very popular gay Black man who support Republican, proud to support, even in his words, the MAGA folks, until he got around them, until they started calling him all types of names at a rally. And now he's not the only one with that experience. We've seen it. We've documented it. Folks got to come together and wake up. It was really good to see Mayor Scott from Baltimore on Joy Reid's program. And it was good and refreshing that he didn't hold back. I'm so glad we had that clip. Greer grabbed that clip because we see so much going on there, but it's a little segue into the catastrophic situation that happened the other night. Family members of one of the workers missing since the collapse of Baltimore's Francis Scott Key Bridge, they were still trying to hold out hope. One family member, Carlos Sandoval, who is the brother of one of the missing, Maynard Sandoval, said that we still have faith until this moment. He said, God grants the miracle, it would be beautiful. And last night they pulled two bodies from the wreckage. They were in a vehicle that went down when the bridge went down. These were workers that were working on the bridge. They were not, and folks need to know that they were not associated with that ship that hit the bridge. Some people, I saw even reports that employees from the ship, they lost some. They didn't lose anybody. In fact, no one on the ship was injured. These were workers. They were local workers who were doing work on the bridge. And one of the family members, this young man, this young worker, Maynard, he's one of 8 siblings. And his family describes him as a kind and joyful person who had a vision. His brother said he always wanted to have his own business. He always said his elderly years would be in Honduras. In the meantime, and something that still is not very important right now, Maryland's top lawmakers said that they are preparing to introduce emergency legislation to provide financial relief to rebuild the bridge. But the important part of it is this. This is important. Employees affected by the Key Bridge collapse, they want to provide relief as well. Senate President Bill Ferguson, who represents Baltimore City, announced that he is collaborating with Delegate Luke Clippinger and other lawmakers whose districts include the ports of Baltimore to expedite emergency measures. So their concern, of course, is that this affects at least 15,000 Baltimore workers. The Washington Informer's Anthony Tillman first reported on this legislation. So let's throw Anthony that credit. According to Ferguson, as we said, over 15,000 individuals in Baltimore and the surrounding region depend on the port operations for their jobs. He said the human cost of lives lost yesterday is overwhelming and tragic. The economic instability lost to the thousands impacted in the days ahead cannot be understated. Of course, we know Governor Wes Moore and Mayor Brandon Scott of Baltimore also have said they recognize the urgency of getting people back to work and preventing massive income losses. So many, and it's not just the Baltimore area that depends on that port. That port is a very important port, if you will, not just for Baltimore, but throughout the East Coast. Is a vital part. It plays a vital part in the East Coast's shipping infrastructure. It handles millions of tons of cargo every year. That's worth billions of dollars. And so the mayor had mentioned too that last year alone, the Port of Baltimore reportedly facilitated the shipment of more than 840,000 new cars and trucks, making it the leading American seaport for automotive exports. So the ripple effect of this closure is immediate because state officials say that over 140,000 jobs indirectly tied to the port across the country could be affected. Of course, it contributes more than $400 million in tax revenue to the state of Maryland. Michelle Madison mentions that also today is opening day for the Baltimore Orioles. And she says, I'm sure that it will be affected as well. Yeah, it seems like when tragedies like this happen, sports, you put it in this, people finally put it, sports and entertainment in its proper place, don't they? And it's going to be interesting to see what happens this afternoon at Camden Yards. I'm quite sure that the Oriole organization, in fact, they just got a new owner as their previous owner passed away a couple of weeks ago, but I'm pretty sure the organization is going to do all it can to recognize the port, the bridge, the victims, and be as respectful as possible. The Orioles, by the way, are picked by some to win the World Series this year. It's the first time in decades that they've been mentioned among the favorites. But they've retooled, rebuilt, and now they're ready to play some baseball, some real meaningful baseball. Turning my attention to Mr. Ice Cube. He, if in case you missed it, now the big three season is 8 games long, 10 if you make the playoffs. And he's reached out to Caitlin Clark. Y'all know Caitlin Clark. He's offered her $5 million, which is really, if she went on, and she will go on to the WNBA if she chooses, she could make $5 million playing basketball in the WNBA. It would take her about 20 years. Because the top salary, I believe, is like $250,000 in the WNBA. And this wouldn't impede on her playing in the WNBA because the Big Three schedule comes after the WNBA season and before its next season. And he's speaking out on the offer, saying it was a no-brainer to pitch Caitlin Clark to his organization. He says Caitlin is a generational athlete who can achieve tremendous success in the Big Three. Naturally, it will bring attention to the Big Three as well. He didn't say that. I'm saying it. He pointed out that his league has a track record of breaking barriers with female coaches like Nancy Lieberman and Lisa Leslie. And Ice Cube goes on to say, with our offer, Caitlin Clark can make history and break down even more barriers for women athletes. So I got a question. And I was looking at, and I usually don't respond to stuff that has nothing to do with me on Twitter. But I responded to Ice Cube's tweet. And I said, well, what about Angel Reese? And somebody aptly pointed out that Angel Reese is a junior. She's not a senior. And she's got another year if she so chooses. And let me just say this aside, Angel Reese is making money hand over fist anyway. I mean, not just with the NIL stuff, but she's got endorsements after endorsements after endorsements. But what surprises me, not so much Ice Cube, because they are top Black women seniors in college basketball. He says, and people says, well, she's a generation talent. What surprises me is the comments by what appears to be Black folks who defend this and missed the whole point of the question, what about Angel Reese? Yes, Power 96, Ice Cube, he called him White Cube, has been shucking and jiving for a while now. We keep talking about how, and y'all heard us now today, DE&I, et cetera, et cetera. When a Black person is in charge of something, I'm not saying you got to hire Black folks only. But in this climate, Caitlin Clark is going to get hers regardless of whether Ice Cube gives it to her or not. Give that opportunity to another high profile. That's why I mentioned Angel Reese, another high profile athlete. It's okay. I have no problems with the big three, which is, you know, it's not even consequential, the big three. I have no problem with that, with a woman going into the big three. But my problem is, once again, Mr. MAGA supporter, Ice Cube, where are the opportunities? It's the Black community that made you Ice Cube. It's the Black community that made Jay-Z. It's the Black community that made Diddy. It's the Black community that made all of these guys. And it's particularly galling when it's from the rap community. Because most of those guys, unless your name is Eminem or Vanilla Ice, most of those guys came from where we came from. And so it's galling that they would seek to continue to enrich those. Listen, with all that stuff we're talking about, with how many Americans and most American politicians want to take this country back to when we were in chains. And they don't want to give opportunities to people who look like Ice Cube. And he wants to give opportunities to them. And Caitlin Clark, if this happens, they are able to succeed in taking this country back to Jim Crow and beyond. Caitlin Clark is going to be okay. Angel Reese is not going to be okay. But neither is Ice Cube. I mean, give me a break. This is why I was so appalled. And again, you know, people say, "Oh, you're always dissing Jay-Z." And when Jay-Z opened Tidal, and they had the audacity to take cameras into his offices, and every single person at Tidal was white. Every single one. There was not a Black face except him and Beyonce. It's just appalling. Now, I don't know the makeup over there now, but this was years ago. And it's not the point, Quinn Durrett. He says, you know, Angel is not the better player. That's not the point. Pay attention. It's not the point at all. I understand that Caitlin Clark is considered the best. I understand that. But you're going to tell me she's the only superstar in college basketball, women's college basketball? That there are no Black superstars in college basketball? It's just absurd. Again, like I said earlier, it should be all hands on deck. And that includes stuff like this. I could care less that if people believe that Caitlin Clark is the best in college. She hasn't won a championship. Last I checked, LSU won. Last I checked, my girl down in South Carolina is undefeated. Big Sis says she's not even all that from what I saw the other night. She says Shameik Holdsclaw was a pure shooter. I mean, it's tantamount, in my view, and maybe this is a stretch, but in my view, it's tantamount to this. Ice Cube seeing, what's her name? She never got an accolade. Shameik was another Steph Curry. She was. Shamika. The young WNBA star who was imprisoned in Russia. Y'all know who I'm talking about. What's her name? The one from Russia. That was in Russia. What's her name? But how can I forget her name? I spoke to her and her wife at the dinner last year. Brittany Griner. Yeah. It's tantamount to Brittany Griner and say Caitlin Clark being over in Russia locked up, and Ice Cube has a chance to free one of them, and he frees Caitlin Clark. To me, it's the same thing. Folks may say that's a stretch. Well, if you think about it, think real hard too. And this is my point, Power 96. He says, how is Caitlin the best? When did she win a national title? She is overrated, just like people thought Leitner was better than Shaq. And I remember that like it was yesterday. Christian Leitner. Well, how did his career end up? And how many rings did Shaq wind up with? People don't, do we even hear the name Christian Leitner anymore? He's 100% right. 100% right. Ice Cube says that, and so I mentioned the whole Russia thing too, because in his statement, he goes on to say they should have, talking about women, more than just one professional option in the U.S. at a time when American pro sports leagues are being infiltrated by autocratic anti-women regimes such as Qatar. Our path-breaking offer to Caitlin Clark demonstrates that Big Three now offers another choice for athletes. He says women should not have to go overseas. Okay. In other words, like I said, Brittany Griner went over there, got herself in a little trouble, and they put her in a penal colony. Didn't hear anything from Ice Cube. People were speaking out left and right, free Brittany. Ice Cube was saying, vote for Trump. That's where Ice Cube, I had no problem with Ice Cube until now. Until his foolery surfaced. We had Ice Cube on the program a couple years ago. Had a lot of fun with him. We even gave, the Black Press did, Ice Cube a big award at our convention. But it's just funny how Black people who have accomplished something just turns a blind eye to other Black folks. And as we said about people like Candace Owens, people like Clarence Thomas, they climb that DE&I ladder and then they kick it out from under them. Make sure nobody else does it. I mean, Ice Cube's supposed to be, 100%. He's supposed to be Compton. I wonder how they feel about him. Austin says that Ice Cube has turned into the simpleton character he played in Friday. And Power 96 says, note to self, never ride around in a car with Tucker Carlson. Cube has gone full MAGA Billy. And Mike V, the same Ice Cube who said he wouldn't sit down with the president in the 90s. And guys get power drunk. This is why Diddy's in trouble. They get drunk off the power, get drunk off their own headlines. They get drunk off of the fact that they made some money. That's why they get in trouble. And what happens when they get in trouble? They reclaim their Blackness. Look at Candace Owens. We talked extensively about Candace Owens yesterday. And what she's trying to do. Trying to weasel her way back into the graces of black folk. Trying to go on black centered or black targeted shows. Greer said, breaking all the rules, don't do your own drugs. Look, I mean, if a third of the stuff with Diddy is true, it's just absolutely pathetic. I can only imagine what his mama is thinking. Can only imagine. It's like, what happened? This is not who I raised. And look, the social media hasn't stopped. They are relentless, not just on Diddy, but others. And I don't know why folks are doing this. And maybe we'll find out why they're doing it, or maybe it's just because this is what they do. But they continue to bring up Jay-Z. And so many are saying he's complicit. I don't know why. Jay-Z seems to be like out of the spotlight, but in the spotlight, like when he needs to be in the spotlight, acting like or being a true mogul. Because you don't really moguls. See, we throw that title around. See all the articles, hip hop mogul Diddy, hip hop mogul this. Moguls generally, just like board members, usually stay in the background. Board members have no business out front. We never. Do you know who's on the GM board? You don't even know, right? I don't know, because that's the way it's designed. Company presidents now, that's a different story. It's a different story. They're the ones that have to or should be the ones that carries the message of the organization front and center. Jay-Z is, he's in the background. Diddy's all out in the open with his stuff. That stuff with, whether it's Young Miami, Carissa, whatever. He's all out in the open. He's all out in the open. Right. And board members, they're supposed to raise money. Not the president, but the board members. President takes care of the money. The board members are supposed to raise it, keep the organization going, and stay behind the scenes. Southbound 3000. Again, Dame Dash. Why is that? Somebody asked this question. He says everyone thinks Dame Dash is crazy. What is the deal? I tell you, I knew someone who is the mother of one of Dame Dash's kids. But I don't know much about Dame Dash. What's the hate surrounding Dame Dash? I don't know. I don't know why. I don't know Dame Dash. I don't know a lot about Dame Dash, but I keep seeing a lot of hate directed toward Dame Dash. I don't know if that dude deserves it or not. I don't know if he deserves it at all. I know he has some beef with the baby mama, one of them anyway, that, like I said, I knew her. But even her, the beef was over how much child support and how much time he was spending with the child. And in that case, the individual was complaining that he had the child all the time. So I don't get it. You know, both ways. Man ain't spending much time with kids. In this case, Dame's allegedly spending too much time. I don't see how you can spend too much time with your children. Mike V said, Dame said, you're not a man if you're not your own boss. Well, that's a little extreme. That's a bit extreme. But to hate him for that, I don't know. I can't hate him for that. I just think he's wrong. I know he's wrong. if that is indeed what he said. Dame Dash is crazy. Oh gosh, yeah. Greer says he's not crazy. She says he's not crazy. See, Greer knows all these folks. She's worked with all these folks. She's done a lot of stuff in her life, a lot of big things that people she keeps it under wraps. So I'll leave it at that. Ramona, we got to talk about Ramona Edelin. Once upon a time, Black Americans, as y'all know, were simply known as colored people or Negroes, or worse. But that is until Ramona Edelin came along, the activist renowned for her pivotal roles in advancing civil rights, education reform, and community empowerment, died at her DC residence last month at the age of 78. Her death was just confirmed. That's why we're now reporting it. Barnaby Towns, who's a communications strategist who collaborated with her, announced the death and attributed it to cancer. She was born on September 4th, 1945 in Los Angeles, and early in her life, her early years were marked by a commitment to education and social justice, according to her History Makers biography. And it's something, because when you get on the History Makers, you know you've done something special. When you got a bio on the History Makers, you've done something special. And for those who don't know, the History Makers is a Black organization, and they have profiled just about every big name or every consequential name in Black history. Check out their website sometimes. I have for years and years followed the History Makers. But after she graduated from Fisk University, she did so, by the way, in 1967 with a bachelor's degree. She went on to pursue studies at the University of East Anglia in England, Anglia, England. She earned a master's degree, and then she completed her doctorate at Boston University in 1981. Her contributions to academia and activism were just off the charts. She was pivotal in popularizing the term African American. Her and Jesse Jackson, it was the late 80s when Jesse had announced the preference for African Americans. He was speaking at a summit that she organized. And Jesse went on to say, just as we were called colored, but we're not that, and then Negro, but not that, to be called Black is just as baseless. And then he said, African American has cultural integrity and puts us in a proper historical context, to which Edelin called up Ebony Magazine and said, listen, calling ourselves African Americans is the first step in the cultural offensive. She linked the name change to a cultural renaissance in which Black Americans reconnected with their history and heritage. She says, who are we if we don't acknowledge our motherland? When a child in a ghetto calls himself African American, immediately he's international. You've taken him from the ghetto and put him on the globe. Ramona Edelin, she touched many and certainly will be missed. Power 96 says Black conservatives will feel upset or get upset if you call them African American. They have issues. Well, you know, and that's a debate, right? Because colored was, and there was a movie, I think it was Felicia Rashad was in that movie. It was called Once Upon a Time When We Were Colored. And that is like, everybody's colored in some way, right? There's no distinction there. And Negro, you know, it just for many identified too closely to that other N word, right? And then Black, well, some argue, look at our skins, for many of our skins. Some of our skins is brown. We not all, you know, you're hard pressed to find a true black colored individual, a person that's just black. Like I'm looking at a screen over there, it's totally black. And I don't know that I've seen anybody that black. Maybe in a, you know, in a magazine or something, or picture or something. And I don't know how much of that was makeup. So after Jesse and Ramona Edlin made that call, we've not looked back. We've been African American ever since. As Trump would say, the African American. But, you know, lately he's changed that. He's now the blacks, showing his true colors. Oh, boy. Dodger Stadium in Los Angeles is known for being one of the biggest and oldest and most beautiful Major League Baseball parks, I might add. Having hosted 10 World Series and served as a grand entertainment venue for music icons like Elton John, the Beatles, the Jacksons. But before its construction in 1962, the area was home to thousands of residents, many of whom were of Mexican, Chinese, and Italian descent. Nearly 1,800 of those families were displaced to build the stadium. State legislators are now considering a bill seeking reparations for the families. Assemblywoman Wendy Carrillo of Los Angeles introduced the Chavez Ravine Accountability Act, offering a path toward what she calls historical accountability, reparative measures, and a permanent memorial. It's 315 acres of land between the San Gabriel Mountains and downtown Los Angeles. I mean, if you've never been to Dodger Stadium, it's like an island unto himself. It takes forever to get to the stadium from the parking lot. When you enter the parking lot, it's so much land there. And unlike other stadiums that you see, there's nothing around Dodger Stadium except land. It's Dodger Town. And so they took this land, they displaced communities, and they had promised them newly redeveloped housing. That promise was never fulfilled. Public housing plans for the Chavez Ravine area were abandoned in 1958 in favor of course, building Dodger Stadium. And there's been so many efforts to block. There were so many efforts even before the Dodgers decided to go to Los Angeles to have construction of better homes for those individuals there. It never happened. So now they want to repair these descendants of these people. But Los Angeles, I don't know how much, if anything, it costs for them to talk, you know, and put these bills together and then have a study. The study does cost, I know. But why bother? Why bother at this point? Los Angeles did its own study on, you know, they commissioned this study on reparations for descendants of Black folks. And of course, the recommendation came back. All of California, I'd say Los Angeles, California did. It was San Francisco actually who did its own, apart from the state. But the California Reparations Commission emanated from the Los Angeles General Assembly. And that's all they ever do, study. I'm going to say it again. And I don't think that in any way that victims of the Holocaust should not have been repaired. They should have. But there was never a study. There was never a prolonged, let's talk about it. They continue to get reparations without a study, without talking about it, without all of this legislative nonsense. So once again, the Negro, because Power 96 says his birth certificate has Negro on it. He says it's Louisiana. We're behind on a lot. Once again, the Negro, the African American, is shortchanged intentionally, totally intentional. Now I'm going to spend a last couple of minutes on this because I've been getting phone calls and text. The Daily Mail called me. The New York Post been calling me. I am not. I have purposely detached myself from all things Michael Jackson. There's a huge feud going on. Michael Jackson's youngest son, who folks used to know as Blanket, who now calls himself BG, who is an heir to his father's estate. The estate is now worth over $2 billion. And his grandmother, Catherine, who's 93 years old, he, BG, if you will, Blanket, and his siblings and Catherine last year had fought against a deal that the estate was making to sell 50% interest in Michael Jackson's vast catalog, his amazing catalog. And they fought and they lost. The estate sold 50% of the catalog to Sony Music, which is ironic because that was the company that, of course, Michael Jackson performed under. 50% for $600 million. Now, everybody's been selling off their masters and their catalogs. The thing about John Branca, attorney John Branca, and music mogul, if you will, John McClain, those two men, they are the executors of Michael Jackson's estate. When Michael Jackson died, Michael Jackson was almost a pauper. He was $500 million in debt. He was spiraling. Didn't want to perform, but finally decided it was his only way. It was the only way to come out of this hole. And AEG Entertainment signed him to do his farewell tour. This is it. It was really a tour. It was a residency at the London's O2 Arena. He was going to do 50 dates. Initially, it was 10. It became 50, 52 dates. That was going to take care of all of his debt and put him back in a very comfortable financial position. And so he reluctantly agreed to do those shows. But that estate, after he died, they made a filing with the IRS that said Michael Jackson, the king of pop, the guy who broke all these records, the guy that people still worship today, when he died, his net worth, according to the estate and their filings with the IRS, was $2,500. $2,500. You got that? You heard that right. And they argued, the IRS was like, how could that be? And they took him to court. The IRS took the estate to court. And the estate had to prove, indeed, that Michael Jackson, at death in June of 2009, was worth $2,500. That mansion he was living in, that right there next to where Diddy lives now, was being sponsored. Somebody was footing the bill for him, $25,000 a month. And his last several years, after his trial in 2005, he was sponsored. He went over to Bahrain. The prince over there sponsored his life for a while. He moved around. The Lord of the Dance, what's the guy named? Michael Flatley, kind of sponsored Michael's life a little bit. He never got his footing back. And when he was about to get his footing back, he died. And we know that the Me Too era came. We know that R. Kelly went to prison for his pedophilia. Bill Cosby went to prison for 3 years because of the Me Too movement. Harvey Weinstein went. Then that devastating 2019 documentary, Leaving Neverland, which showed two of his victims, Michael Jackson's victims. Despite all of that, John McClane and John Branca have been able to do the unthinkable. They have navigated all of that, and people, a new generation of fans, came to know and love Michael Jackson, those who never knew him alive. $2 billion or more prospering. And this fight about selling it. So Catherine, allegedly, her position is that they could have gotten more money. Catherine is getting bad advice, because here's the deal. They got $600 million for only 50% of his catalog. And here's the big deal. Unlike everybody else who sold their masters and their catalogs, the Jackson heirs, his children, the estate, continues to control the music under the deal with Sony. You can't ask for, you can't dream of a better deal. They keep control of it. So in other words, while Sony may own that 50%, they still get to tell Sony how to use that. The Jackson family has historically, and this is not a diss, this is a fact, been fighting amongst themselves so much that they can't see the forest for the trees. And so now Blanket, Catherine wants to appeal, and that Blanket was with his grandmother on the initial fight, but he said this, which I think is an extremely mature thing for a 22-year-old to say. He said that it's a losing battle. He says, my grandma, all they're going to do for my grandmother, these lawyers are going to charge her $1,400 an hour, and she's going to lose anyway. So why waste the money? He's 100% right. And again, this is not a knock against Catherine Jackson. But she's getting horrible advice. And the reason why she's getting horrible advice, of course, her lawyers are going to go through it, because her lawyers are making the money. The estate has paid Catherine since Michael's death over $55 million. And she was only listed as a guardian, a trustee. And she gave up guardianship about 5-6 years ago. And yet they still pay her taxes. They just last year paid $5 million in taxes for her. She's got a beautiful mansion she lives in out in Calabasas. It's fully staffed, 24 hours, personal chef, and everything else. Reportedly, she gives her daughters Rebe and Latoya $37,000 a month from the money. Because see, Michael didn't leave anything in his will for his siblings, nor his father, who died a few years ago as well. And he only left it to his 3 kids. And they take over full control when they're 32 years old. Now, why he picked that age, I don't know. But they are living high on the hog, as it will, as it was. But this infighting that has prevented, see, here's the problem. That has prevented the Jacksons from being recognized in their true place as true icons. Because people look at them, even in the industry, these people are crazy. When I was around them, I used to hang out with them a lot, right? And my thing was always, guys, especially when Michael was alive, get it together. Go out and do. You see the Temptations, and they're not even the real Temptations, right? We know many of the Temptations died. We see the Four Tops. They're not even the real Four Tops. I think it's one surviving member. We see others. Gladys Knight, Diana Ross, everybody going out making money, touring, and selling out. You don't need and their thing was, they didn't want to do it. They was afraid to do it without Michael. And my thing was, and this is real conversation, I would say to Jackie, and Tito and Jermaine. Well, think about it like this. Everybody else is doing it. You got a core base of fans that'll come out and see you without Michael. But you also got Michael's fans who will come out and see you with the hope and the wish and the prayer that out of nowhere, Michael will jump on that stage with y'all. So you have that going for you. I used to tell them that all the time. And then when Michael died, the brothers decided to try and take advantage of all of the great publicity. I call it great publicity, unfortunate publicity. And then they did some shows. And they were recognized. People came out and saw them. My thing is, I always said this, the greatest concert was not a Michael Jackson concert. The greatest concert was a concert with Michael Jackson and his brothers. And for those who never got to see that, go back and look at video. And you probably still can't get the full effect of what it was like to sit there in an arena or stadium and take in the Jacksons as a group. There was nothing like it. The electricity that flowed through the arenas and stadiums was unparalleled, unmatched. But they are very selfish, ego-driven individuals. And it's a typical Black situation where, and I call it a typical Black situation where it's one doesn't want to see the next one succeed. And we got to stop that behavior, that mindset. And that permeates the Jackson family. Shonda H says, are the Jacksons getting any financial return on the upcoming Jackson biopic to be released? Well, the thing about that, that's another part of it. So this, even though Michael totally opposed his brothers and sisters, really, from getting any piece of his pie, the one thing he was never opposed to was seeing his nieces and nephews taken care of. And his nephew, Jafar, Jermaine's child, is playing his uncle Michael in that upcoming Jackson movie. I think it's a great thing. If you want somebody to impersonate or to portray Michael, look no further than family. There's some talented people in that family. I tell you what, whether it's Joseph or Catherine, and I think it's I think it's both of them. I'll say that and stay out of trouble. I was going to give one more credit than the other, but but there is some extremely talented folks in there, all the way down to the grandkids. Now, Michael's kids, of course, we know that they're not biological, and so I don't know the talents of a Prince or Paris or Blanket. I have no clue. The only time I was ever around them was when they were small children. So I don't know. They were very small. But the Jacksons at this late date, and these guys, the Jackson brothers in particular, at this age, they all are. The sisters too, they're older. They're in their 60s and 70s. You got to stop. It's never going to stop because it hasn't stopped now, right? Catherine is 93 years old, meaning odds are, I should say, that she's not long for this earth. Let her live out her days peacefully. Let her live out peacefully. I don't know what type of mental state she might be in. I have not been around them in years. I don't know what type of health she's in. I wish her the best. We'll always have a measure of respect and love for her. Shonda says, Jafar reminds me a lot of Michael. He even sounds like him and has some of his similar mannerisms with performing. Yeah, he does. I think the one that really, and we got to close, but I think the one that really, more than any of the others, more than Jackie's kids, more than Jermaine's kids, Tito's kids, and Tito's kids, of course, what formed the 3T back in the 90s, and they had some success overseas with that group. And Michael did some music with them and even performed with them a little bit. But the one person in that entire family, I think they got like 30, 32 grandkids, Joseph and Catherine. There's one that really stands out to me as Michael, and that would be Austin, Reeby's child. That dude looks like his uncle, is as talented, as charismatic. There is it's amazing to me that we don't hear more about him. And I'm not sure why, because I know that he does shows particularly out in Los Angeles, but probably in other places. But this is an extremely talented family, and wish them the best. Wish them the best. Folks, we appreciate you joining us. Go to our YouTube page and hit subscribe. Y'all been doing it too. I really appreciate that. I've noticed it. Let it be known news. Subscribe. And hey, tomorrow's Friday. It's something to be happy about. We'll see you then.